Back to Market on Close. I'm Marley Caden. It's time to get you set up for earnings season as we'll see the big banks begin to report tomorrow morning. Joining us now is Tony Zipparro, the CEO of Equity Set. Tony, thank you for being with us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Yep, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, I'd love to know how you're feeling as we head into this official kickoff of second quarter reports.
Yeah, so earnings sentiment on my end, I feel they're going to be strong, right? You've got tech, telecom, you've even got banks, which I think are going to be, again, post impressive results. Obviously, we're expecting growth, depending on the sector, depending on the name, somewhere between, call it 4 and 9%. I think a lot of big names are going to beat that. So I feel very confident about that top line and bottom line growth for those names. I think the question really comes down to what that might translate to in terms of price action and valuation. But earnings, I think they're going to be really strong all around.
So if that happens, how do you think the market response is going to be? Because a lot of that expectation is already baked in, right?
Yep, I think a lot of good news is priced in. I think they're going to be looking at guidance and guidance that if there's any slippage in what they're guiding forward, no matter the name, or if they're pointing to anything around tariffs or macroeconomic headwinds or geopolitical items, I think that's going to tend to take some names down, whether they deserve it or not. And so I think those are really the risk points going in is good is not good enough. It's got to be spectacular. And if there's any kind of weakness or uncertainty about the next even quarter or two, I think those names are going to get hit a little bit harder.
And how much do you think we're going to see companies factor in tariff implications? You know, we started to see some of this in a few of the early reporters as we don't have a ton of certainty, but there's enough to at least model it into the guidance. How many companies are going to step up and give guidance, do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because as we saw last quarter, a lot sometimes even pulled their guidance because they weren't sure the implications. I still feel the actual impacts that a lot of these companies to feel aren't known. I think, though, they maybe have a better idea of certainty of when they could hit and what those could be. So I think they've had an extra quarter to model it. And I think, if anything, they might be a little bit betting on the side that tariffs won't hit as hard as they expected. So I think that clarity around what it could be, whether it's accurate or not, based on the final tariffs that are coming and hitting in the next couple of weeks, I think will help to calm investors a little bit. But I think if they get it wrong and then the tariffs hit harder and it's a larger impact, that spells a lot of trouble for those stocks that do that.
Certainly could. And how much would a stumble, we've seen a lot of the big names moving the market quite a bit in recent months. If a big name has a stumble, how big could the impact be to the overall market?
Yeah, I think it could be huge. You've got a lot of strength in kind of the narrow breadth of the top S&P components, and that's really what's been carrying the market. And so, again, we've come so far. We're obviously right at all-time highs. Even so, a big name, right? Whatever it be, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Amazon. If any of those names say fall 5, 10, 15%, right? The index itself could take a 2, 3, 4% hit, right? Depending what the rest of the components do. But that could easily be an issue if a name tumbles 15, 20%, right? Brings the index down that much because of the weighting. But I don't think it's reason to panic, right? I think the reality is you almost want some of the air to come out of the market because we've come up 20, 25, 30% in a lot of the indices, and we haven't seen a meaningful 5, 8, even 10% correction. So I think, again, a big name stumbles, people are going to wake up to some nasty news and some big moves down, but it's putting it into perspective, zooming out of that's what makes a healthy market. Again, getting some of the retracement and then buying on weakness.
Mm-hmm. And as far as trends go through earnings season, are there any trends you're expecting to see across the board or across a specific sector?
I think with telecom, tech, and even financials, right? Banks, I think you're going to see a lot of strengths and those trends continue. Obviously on the financial side, which are coming up in the next couple of days here, trading is going to be strong, even though M&A, right, investment banking, and potentially loan growth has slowed. A lot of these banks are making a lot of money at the trading desk, so I think they will surprise a lot of times to the bottom line, and then provide some pretty strong guidance going forward. And then same thing with, again, the major players, right? The top 7 to 10 components, whether they be semi, tech, or information technology stocks. I think those are going to show impressive growth, and that they're going to kind of extrapolate that out forward. Again, the game is picking the ones that won't maybe be hit as hard or that will surprise much more than investors think to the upside.
And as far as the macro headwinds that are existing, what do you think has the potential to have the biggest impact on earnings season?
I think there's a lot of turmoil, right, with the dollar weakening and potentially even Japan yields, right, skyrocketing. And so I think, while not directly related to the earnings themselves, if that yen carry trade, if international yields, especially in Japan, continue to skyrocket, I think that may be a news interruption that takes away from the earnings themselves. And so I think that is a very real risk. As well as the fact that bonds just can't catch a break. We're near 5% mark on the 30-year and 4.5% on the 20-year, and really nobody's taken notice. So I think those are aspects that will take center stage, whether it be this week or if it still takes a couple weeks or months to get there.
Certainly have a possibility to see some movement in those with the CPI coming out tomorrow as well. Thank you, Tony. We appreciate your time. That's Tony Zipparro from Equity Set.